this is one of the few cards on the planet that I would do this for. Like
Yeah.
in my mind, it was worth all that travel because that was again like on the very short list of cards that I never thought I was ever going to see, and then I ended up going home with it. So it was like one of the best and probably craziest days of my collecting career.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Cards and Content. A lot to get into on today's episode. Have a special guest joining us here in a little bit, Darius, a longtime collector in this space. Someone I actually share a lot of like similar collecting, ideation with. We collect a lot of the same things. He works in the space now, so that's a fun. I think you guys will get some value out of that. Again, I love learning from people who collect cool, unique, cards, especially stuff that I, gravitate towards as well. I just love learning, kind of why and, their thought process there. So I think you guys will get some good value out of that. That will be coming up here. Obviously, we got to get into Stock Watch with our guy, Gabe. Talk about, the Buckeyes. We'll get into that with Stock Watch. I'll save some of my disappointment for that piece of the podcast. But while we're on the topic of college football, the one thing on my mind today, right? So you asked me what's on my mind. It would definitely have to be. We didn't get to talk about this last week, but how far the NIL card space has come. Bowman's Best University drops last Friday, right? A couple days removed from that. And I posted about this. I don't know how many people caught on to this, but the vertical, there's a horizontal dual patch auto, and there's a vertical jumbo patch auto. The jumbo patch auto in Bowman's Best this year is game used, right? Think of how far college football cards have come with now game used patch autos. I know there are game used cards in old school Panini stuff like 2015, 2016, Immaculate Collegiate. There's game used patch auto or game used patch cards for sure. I own a couple of Zeke, so I know there's some game used ones in there. But now with NIL and with, so many more athletes available in college, right? Like, some of the guys in here now, like Whit Weeks has one. He plays at LSU. Like, he just played this season. You've got Gunnar Stockton, game used patch autos. He plays at Georgia. You've got Dylan Stewart. You've got Eli Holstein. Like, these guys are playing in college football now. Now you have game-used patch autos of them in the card market while they're enrolled in school. What a really cool opportunity. Again, as, someone who wants to see the card market succeed and do well, I think an addition like this is huge for cards in general. I mean, anytime you can get a game-used patch auto versus some, off the rack, Dick's Sporting Goods jersey, that is a win in general. Now with the evolution of, NIL and college sports, to be able to get game-used patch autos and to put those in there, especially while, these guys are in school, what a great addition. So I know I've talked about it recently with, like, this being a great time of the year for college football product in general with Bowman Chrome U, Bowman Chrome U Sapphire, Bowman's Best Football, Prism Draft Picks Football, and about to be National Treasures Collegiate. It's a great time of the year, but to see something as cool as that, a game-used patch auto in a modern-day NIL is awesome. So, big fan of that. Job well done for Tops and the team there. Not every player has a game-used patch auto. So, for instance, a guy like Fernando Mendoza has a dual. He's the horizontal. That's a player used. Still, again, to have some kind of jersey auto of those guys is cool, but got to give them a lot of credit for, some of those. Again, if you've seen the patches, there's some premier prime patches, bowl logos, conference crests, team logos, incredible looking cards, right? I have some from past Bowman's Best that look really cool, but now you're telling me this is from a game used jersey. That's special. So really, really fun addition to a great college football product. So that was definitely on my mind. While we're talking about, again, continuing on with game used, you got a big time Ohtani on bids right now, and it's safe to say Ohtani's market is completely out of this world. It is in its own world. $1 million plus bid right now if it stands. This is live on Fanatics Collect right now. The 2025 Topps Chrome MVP Award, the Gold LOGOMAN 101 Shohei Ohtani. It's from April 29th, 2025, game used. LOGOMAN, he was 1 for 4 with a home run. I've got to say, aesthetically, this card is beautiful. It is a beautiful looking card. But $1 million, $1 million baseball card. Man, sports cards have officially exploded. I realize this dude's market. He's got a major international following. He's the best player in baseball. He's probably one of the best baseball players, if not the best to ever play. He pitches, he catches. He's got 4 MVPs. He's got back-to-back World Series titles. I mean, this dude's got everything. The only thing at this point that can derail Ohtani is Ohtani or injuries. But clearly, there's a mass demand for his cards. Again, like I said, you got to give credit for the card. The design of this card is beautiful. The gold LOGOMAN looks incredible. And again, I think we spoke to this last week or the week prior about Topps' ability to work with these leagues, with athletes, for, cool opportunities. We talked about the F1 collaboration with Dynasty coming out and how big that was with, F1's massive following on Instagram. But to get stuff like this in baseball, like, hey, gold LOGOMAN, hey, debut patches, like working with those, sports to get those cards integrated into those jerseys, and then to produce the trading card, the execution in marketing that Topps does on cards like this is second to none. And this is just a clear indication of, the success of what they're doing right now. So Ohtani market, I think it said most expensive Ohtani ever if it stood right now. But I was wondering, I remember when the Ohtani Superfractor got hit, it was right before the National in 2018. I just remember when that got hit. I remember the post the guy made about it. I think it got Beckett graded. But that doesn't show up in sales history. Like we're searching on Card Ladder, and that doesn't show up in the sales history. And I don't remember what that total was. So I thought for some reason that card would have sold more. It would obviously shatter records right now. I mean, the Ohtani Bowman Chrome Superfractor ended up on bids right now. I would imagine that would do millions above his highest sale ever. So it could be a pretty big card if it ever resurfaces. I don't know if it's in one of those collections forever, or if it's someone's like, hey, I'll make a few quick million and resell this 7 years later. So we'll see, but obviously a good sign for the card market right now with where Ohtani stuff is. Did a big video this week. On YouTube. Again, I talk about the content side of these things. I realize we don't provide, a ton of insight into the content on here. Some episodes we get into it, but ripped 500 packs of Donruss football for a video. We've done some bigger. Sorry, my son is here waiting to get into the office. I don't know if you guys can catch them on the microphone. I don't know if the microphone picks it up, but he's over here hooting and hollering outside the door. So apologize, I'm distracted. But he 500 Donruss packs, right? So look at this. We filmed some big videos before, right? Some ones that require a little bit more planning and execution, and I had no idea what went into ripping 500 packs. It was an undertaking. 2+ hours sitting there, kind of filming and trying to put this piece together. A lot more planning and strategy around a 500 pack video than I originally ever thought. One, that's over 4 cases of blasters. So that's 84 blasters, 6 packs per. You've got to open individual blasters. You've got to film the entire process, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't be surprised to know that people, if you hit a downtown and you don't show you opening the boxes, people on the internet will think that it's staged and it's set up, and you get influencer boxes and all those crazy, crazy takes. So you've got to film that process. You got to open 84. You got to open cases, then you got to open blasters, get all the packs, get all the shots, right? Because when you get all the shots, when you have 500 packs on the table, It's a good shot. It's a good thumbnail. It's a good, you need that piece of content for the video. So just the work, the thought, the detail around a video like that, it was cool to rip. I will say it was a lot, right? It's 500 packs is way more. Like, I've never ripped 500 packs in one setting. Like, ripping a blaster case with 120 packs is a lot. 500 packs sitting there opening is a tremendous amount. But I think the video will produce. So if you guys check it out, I would love some feedback on that, right? Like, I want to try to provide value on the content, so I'm trying to learn as much about these videos as well, so that we can say, oh, hey, this is what we did. This is why we did it. This was how it went. So eager to see how it does. I actually think the video drops. Does it drop tonight or did it drop last night? Yeah, last night. Yeah. So it'll drop. If you're listening to this now, it dropped yesterday. So check that out. Let me know your thoughts on that. But again, we did hit a couple downtowns in there. And I think what we agreed on in the video was any downtown we would hit, we would drop on our whatnot sale. So we have one tomorrow. This is the last big sale for us in 2025. We're just getting too close to the holidays. And if you wait any longer, people aren't going to get stuff before, this time of year. So want to try to give people an opportunity to get stuff under the tree before Christmas, and this is really our last opportunity to do that. So the downtowns we did pull, we will be giving away on whatnot for free. So if you want to win a downtown, on top of that, we have a lot of other big things going on. Again, shameless plug, but we're going to sell 500 optic basketball packs at $1. Those you can pull downtowns in. So again, looking for a stocking stuffer, last minute gift, we'll have some of those. Thousands of cards, more pack deals, Zion cases. We have a bunch of those. We'll give those away. So a cool opportunity for people to get a really good deal or win something cool right before the holidays. So it would be cool to know that somebody won a Zion case or a downtown and gave it to their son or gave it to a friend or gave it to someone as a Christmas gift, or, added a nice card to their collection. So we'll see, but that is this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you're around, check it out. But again, check out that YouTube video. Let me know your thoughts on that. Certainly the biggest rip, the craziest rip we've done so far. So I'll leave it with that. Let's kick it over to our interview with Darius. This one's a little bit longer, but I think it'll provide some good value and some good insight from someone who's been in the industry a long time and has a real eye for collecting the right cool stuff. All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Another special guest on today's podcast. If you guys have watched any episode of Cards and Content, you know that I love to have people on who I think are doing big things in the space and have an eye for really cool cards, collect unique things, and again, just have done cool things in the space. Today's guest is no exception for that. Someone I have followed for quite some time through Instagram, has what I would probably tell you is one of my Grail cards, and is a part of the hobby as well. It currently works at Alt. So Darius Cards, 35 KD on Instagram. My friend, welcome to the pod, and first off, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is we were looking at guests, and I kind of mentioned it in the intro, but I love to talk to people who just have an eye for some of the cool cards. So I want to get into that. I want to get into what you collect and why you collect. But maybe before we start there, maybe for those who don't know you, I always like to ask the first question is, who are you and how did you get right here?
Yeah, so you gave me a brief introduction. I'm Darius, otherwise known as Darius Cards, 35 KD, otherwise known as a aficionado for scrubs, LOGOMAN, shields. That's kind of what I love to collect. But yeah, I'm born and raised in San Francisco, so I'm a Bay Area sports fan. I've been collecting cards since I was like 5, and it's been one of the main constants in my life since I was a little kid. I collected all throughout middle school, high school, college, and then eventually was able to get a job in early 2020 at Alt, back in the really early days of Alt. So I was actually the second employee there, and I've been there now for over 5 years. So it's been a really cool ride. Seeing the company, again from day one, really, and all the while have also still been growing my collection as well. So yeah, it's been a fun time.
Yeah, I didn't actually know you were the second employee at Alt, so I think that'll be a fun kind of conversation to get into, because Ald has, certainly turned into a big player in the space. And, I remember some of the early days during the COVID boom, and, what that was like when the market was on fire and Alt was really coming on the scene. So excited to get into that. But I honestly think you might be one of the first people we've had on the pod that, I think has collected really, like you mentioned, it's always been a part of your life. A lot of people stopped during high school, the college days. I know I collected throughout. I think we're similar in age. So like, what were your like middle school, junior high, like high school? Like when were those years? Because I think that's a piece of like what you collect now.
Yeah, so I'm 31. So I mean, I was, if I was in third grade, I was, 9 years old back in 2003. So like the years that I really started like ramping up in terms of what I was collecting and all that stuff was probably like 2005. That's like right around when I started buying stuff on eBay. Like I still remember the first card that I bought on eBay and having to ask my mom if I could, use I think actually back in those days I used to mail cash
Yeah. Oh
in the
yeah.
mail.
Yeah.
So it was totally different back then. But yeah, so that's kind of very much aligns with what I like to collect is like the early days of when I was first starting out. As I'm sure it is for you, it's just very nostalgic and it
Yep.
just, adds a lot of extra fun to try to go after the best cards and like sort of the unimaginable pieces that probably we didn't even know existed back when we were first collecting.
Yeah. This is definitely. I have talked to a lot of people in this space, and I don't know if there's anybody I probably resonate more with that piece of my collecting. I know what you collect, and I'm going to continue to get into it, but I think that's the one thing like that I try to collect is, like you said, that's such a great way to put it. The unimaginable pieces from being 10 years old, from being 12 years old, from, when you first got into it and, for the love of the game. It's, I was chasing like '06 was big for me. So like the Reggie Bush, Vince Young, Matt Leinart days. So I remember chasing like Reggie Bush, like press pass autos. Now to be able to buy his shields and his 101s and like the best stuff that I would have, like you said, was unimaginable. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So you kind of hinted at it in your intro. You mentioned like the scrub LOGOMANs. Talk me through some of that, because I know a little bit about this, and I think one of our guys actually picked up some cards from you lately, so I'll get into that. But break that down a little bit more for me, like in terms of like what you are actively looking for these days.
For sure. Yeah. And I want to qualify it by saying that today it is the scrub LOGOMAN, right? But these guys were like the hot players of the past, right? So
100%.
like my favorite scrub player is Gerald Green. Like that was the guy who was Tracy McGrady was my favorite player growing up. Gerald Green was supposed to be and was hailed to be the next Tracy McGrady.
Yep.
So back in that day, like he was a hot player. And I still remember like I would go over to my friend's house and watch NBA League Pass because this is back in those days when it's not like social media is everywhere and like it's hard to get access to games and highlights and all that. And so I would literally go to his house just so I could watch the Celtics games to see Gerald Green. Like that's how much of a fan I was of him. And so yeah, like again, these are players that now may not be as popular.
Yep.
But back in that day, to me, like I was thinking that these guys were going to be the next big thing, right? And so I was buying their SB Authentic rookie autos, and like they're pretty cheap cards at the time. And so now having the ability to find and uncover like their LOGOMAN autos, which probably back in those days didn't even surface. Like a lot of these cards are now like getting unearthed for the first time. So that's a pretty cool feeling. And yeah, so I mean, there's a long list of those players that like I sort of thought were going to be good.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing I wasn't buying their LOGOMAN back in those days. And I'm now buying it when they're an afterthought.
Yep.
Saves me a lot of money, but yeah, that's sort of the thought process.
Yeah, I collect, again, similar stuff. I think you're a little bit more basketball heavy. I think I do prefer a little bit more football. But that's kind of the same thing I look for is like the guys that had those moments. Like I know when I look at your collection, like you'll post a random player, but it's like a LOGOMAN from like NT. Like we've got some photos up. Like I've got your Instagram up now. Like the Steven Jackson. Is that Steven Jackson '04 Ultimate like NFL Shield? Like people forget like he's not like super relevant now, but like that card was that was that was a big card. Like those cards, like you said, and I think that's another interesting point is like there's a good chance like these card these cards weren't like passed around and like auction house to auction house and weren't on eBay. Like this was a lot of like forums back in the day, like when you and I were in it was a lot different. It was harder to track some of these cards down. So not only were they like grail cards back then, that some of them were also impossible to find. And you've got like the is that a Carmelo? Is that Carmelo rookie?
It's 2005, so third year LOGOMAN. Yeah,
Third year. And then the Dwight Howards, those rookies.
those are both rookies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, it is your collection now. Like, I understand you sell some stuff. Like, I think one of our guys bought some Logomans from you recently. 0910 NT. I want to
Yeah.
say, I want
Let's
to
see if
say
you remember.
Hansborough?
Tyler Zeller.
Zeller. Yeah.
Yeah. Also UNC guy. So
Yep.
close.
There was that, and there was maybe a King. There was like one Kings and one Hornets player, I think.
Jordan Hamilton on the Nuggets, I think, and
Nuggets.
I also sold you guys a Lee Evans NFL Shield.
The Lee Evans Shield is super cool. I think that's
That was
04
cool.
Ultimate.
Yeah.
Yep, 04 Ultimate. So you have some cool stuff. Yasiel Puig, I see that scrolling through, Brian scrolling through your Instagram here. We've got that up. The Yasiel Puig Superfractor, like, again, that was such a moment. Like, and that's, it was 2013 Bowman Chrome Super. Like, that's not relevant now. But when that card had a moment in cards, it was
Yeah.
humongous.
So that card, I think actually, if you look on Card Ladder, has like an $18,000 comp from like 2014, which at that time, right, that's massive. Like that's
Huge.
a crazy amount. So that just goes to show you the hype that he had back in that moment. And like
Yeah.
that's the other thing, right? It's like you said, the guys who had their moments, like those types of cards, especially when it's like not just a player that I like, but that the market as a whole, it
Yep.
sort of makes it even cooler because that's like an actual chase card, and people are going to be after that too.
A
So
100%. So with that thought process, do you buy stuff with the idea of like you want to keep it forever, or it had a moment, it could have a moment again? Other people, like me, remember when that card was big. You intend to sell it later. Like, I, I, I guess like when you build your collection, is it with the intention to keep it forever, intending to sell later? Like, what's kind of the thought process as you try to like put a collection like this together?
for sure, I think it's twofold because there are certain cards that you see that it's just like that card needs to be like a lifetime PC card. Like there's a short list of cards that, if you find it, you're like, I need to get that, right?
Yep.
So there are certain cards that when I'm picking it up, like I know that those are the ones that are going to be in my PC for a long time. And then there are certain cards too that like I think are great, but I know that it's not an end card with me, right? So I'd say it's all fluid though, right? Because there are certain cards too that like you think you're going to keep forever, and then there's always something comes up that is more enticing and more exciting to you, right? So it is always like there's always a lot of trade-offs, right? You don't have unlimited money, so it definitely can change, like I said. But I'd say generally, like I try to be very picky and specific in what I buy. Otherwise, I just go a little bit too crazy.
Yeah.
So I do generally like to find the types of cards that really do fit in my PC. And if I'm buying something for my PC, like that's my plan for it. But again,
Yep.
it's like it's very hard to commit to that, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna get into the Grail piece in a second. I wanna again, I'm sure I'll bring up some of the stuff that I've kept an eye on your page over the years. Again, just being we have such similar taste. But it looks like you've been acquiring some of these things for a while, right? Like you mentioned, I'm sure you see cool cards being at all. Alt has some really, really cool stuff all the time through there. You've been in the hobby for so long. I'm curious, as someone that has been a part of the hobby for as long as you have, what have you noticed? Have you seen any trends, anything you can kind of shed insight on, maybe going after some of these grail type cards when you started versus like now? Like, and that doesn't have to be started like 20 years ago. That could be you started picking up some of these cards 5 years ago. What do you see
Yeah.
now that maybe surprises you or is different, or might shed some insight on like how the market has changed over this period of time.
For sure. Well, yeah. So I actually did start collecting these Grail types back in like 2020, 2021. So it is a pretty recent thing. And the first one that I actually bought that kind of kickstarted this PC was the Monte Ellis rookie superfractor. Monte Ellis was like one of my favorite players for the Warriors growing up.
Yep.
And it just randomly popped up on eBay. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, this is probably his best card. And I bought it back then for like 2 grand. And I remember just getting the card in and just thinking, like, this is so cool. I have Monte Ellis's best card. And it was kind of like an addicting feeling from there. And then to add on to that, this was like, again, right kind of after the COVID boom had just hit. And
Yep.
so prices were going nuts. But what I realized was these cards were like really affordable. Like $2,000 again for Monte Ellis' best card. To me, that seemed like, again, yeah, he's an afterthought now. But like we were saying earlier, these are players that were really hot back in the day, right?
Yep.
And so from there, I kind of just started to, compiled a list in my head of like who are these guys that I really liked and collected back then, and just I kind of had like a hit list, right? And I actually was like, it's kind of crazy how many of them I actually found in my first year. Like I think the first football one I bought was the Des Bryant NT Rookie Shield. So I just started to find all these cards, and again, to me, they seemed affordable. To the people that I told the prices that I was paying for these cards, they thought I was crazy because they're like, why are you buying Des Bryant in 2021, right?
Yep.
But to that point, in terms of how it's changed today, there is a lot more competition for these cards. Like, I think in
Yep.
those first 2 years that I was doing it, like I could pretty much freely pick up these cards and not have competition. But now a lot of these cards, they're hitting auction, and these are the type of cards that used to never hit auction, right? Like I'm buying all these cards privately. Now they're hitting auction, and like even kind of obscure players are doing pretty big numbers, just because I think you've kind of hinted at it, but the market is moving more towards the Grail, super rare type cards, and so even if it's not necessarily the greatest player, I think people are looking for that really, best of the best type asset.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think one of the things I look at with this is, I think we're getting closer and closer to this like nostalgia period we saw with the late 90s where like, guys are picking up the the Jordans, the rare inserts, the PSA 10s from those days where it's like those cards they could afford. And I feel like you're seeing a lot of this now with like some of these guys that were really, really good 10, 15, 20 years ago that, Des Bryant's a great example. Like, a lot of the guys we've brought up, like Monta Ellis, like for most card collectors, Monta Ellis is like an afterthought. He's not there, but like what that meant to somebody in the Bay Area, that like, Monta Ellis was a humongous deal before Steph Curry came around. And it's like, Des Bryant again in the football world, like I would imagine middle schoolers, high schoolers, a lot of people probably don't even know who Des Bryant is. Like if you're in high school now, you're 18 years old, like you probably don't know who Des Bryant is. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they don't know who that is. And I look at those cards and it's like it feels like there's a collector base now that is going after those, and it's just when they're gone, they're gone. Like they're not coming up for sale. Like, I know we've talked about, a couple cards I purchased some from you. I've asked about a couple cards, and it's like, if you have somebody that shares the same opinion about that time period, about that player, about that set, about that card, and doesn't need the money, it's not going to become available for sale again. And it's like, I think you're seeing this rise in demand on some of these special, more unique cards. But I also feel like that time period of cards, you don't really see it anymore. Like the SP Authentic, again, I'll share it. I think one of the greatest cards, one of my Grail cards you own, is the 2007 Adrian Peterson SP Authentic NFL Shield. I think it's one of the marquee cards from my childhood. 07's a great class all time. You've got Peterson, Lynch, Calvin, Joe Thomas, Darrell Revis. That class is loaded. The Adrian
Patrick
Peterson
Willis.
card. What'd you say?
Patrick Willis.
Patrick
Niner great.
Willis, yeah, again, Niners guy. There's Buckeyes, quite a few Buckeyes in that set. That set is awesome. And the Adrian Peterson is just aesthetically, it's it's beautiful. And you know, I look at cards like that and I'm like, they don't make cards like this anymore. That there's no card on the market. I mean, I think the debut patch auto looks pretty clean. It reminds me of some of those old school cards, but when you see cards like that, I'm like, these are cards I look at and say, when they are sold, they are in forever homes, and it might be forever until you see them again. It's
Yeah,
I look at some of these cards now and I'm like, I don't know if I see a short term stop to this kind of stuff being in demand. I think it's only going to get you know, more and more crazy.
for sure. I agree, and I think another point is that like we said, right? Guys like me and you, we're getting older now, and I think we're we have more disposable income. We're becoming more nostalgic about our past, and so I think there are a lot of people like me and you who are now looking back and wanting to connect with their childhoods and buy the cards that they think are cool. Whereas maybe 5 years ago they were building themselves up in the space and just focus on flipping and building it up, right? Because that's how I was, and I'm sure that's how you were, and a lot of people, right? But
Yep.
after a while, you kind of get to a point where you can only flip and do that so much, and you want to collect something that is meaningful to you. So I think like that's a little bit of the shift that might have something to do with it too.
100%. Yeah, man. I think we have, you know, so many beliefs in the space, and yeah, I feel like I'm agreeing with everything, but it's like so true. It's like as you flip and flip and flip, it's like that's fun. But again, if you really love cards, and I know that we share that same, you know, that same passion, these cards, like, you know, those, again, I think that's such an important take on this is, you know, I always say I would collect these cards if they were worth no money at all. They just happen to be worth something. And, you know, especially the ones from like where I first fell in love with, you know, cards. That's the stuff now I can't wait to own more of. So, any, you know, because you pick up so much cool stuff and you've built a really cool collection, any kind of stories stand out to you as like, you know, a hunt maybe that took a while, or a unique story around picking up one of these grail cards? You've got some cool stuff. I would imagine there's got to be a story or two behind one of these.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I'll do the Adrian Peterson story just because that seems to be your favorite card, and it
Oh
is a
yeah.
really cool story. Because, like I said, like when I first started getting after these cards, like there was definitely a list of like attainable cards that I had, and then there was a list of cards that in my head I'm like, I'm never gonna get this, but it would be just amazing to one day see it, right?
Yep.
And so the Adrian Peterson, I mean, that's like you said, for a guy like us, like that's on the short list of best cards from that era. He
Oh
was
yeah.
the best. I guess him and LT are 1A and 1B in terms of best running backs we've ever watched. But that's to me undoubtedly his best card. And so,
Yep.
like in my mind, I was like, wow, if I ever see that card, it would be cool. But I didn't expect to ever see it. And lo and behold, one day I get a text message from this guy that I kind of work with in the space, and he just sent me the Adrian Peterson card. Just like
Mm.
I was on, I remember I had just checked into my hotel in Hawaii, and like my jaw literally like hit the floor because I was like, what, like where did this card come from? Like so many questions, right? But he actually was wanting to use it in a deal with another collector, and so I kind of had to bite my tongue. And obviously, if the guy wanted to use it, I can't just express my interest on it. And so, kind of selfishly, was hoping that that deal didn't go through, and it didn't. And so, over time, I kind of expressed my interest to him on that card. Um, and he only really wanted to move it for something that he really needed for his PC, so it wasn't like readily available, as you could imagine. But over time, I think and this was probably over the course of maybe 2 months, so it wasn't extremely long either.
Yep.
Um, he actually needed some help with something, like he needed some cards to be moved around, and he didn't want to. And I'm talking a big amount of cards, like probably $2 million worth of cards to be moved around. He didn't want to use pay for a big armored truck or whatever, and so he was kind of hoping that I could go to a couple of vaults, pick up some cards, and bring them to him. And as part of, we would kind of bake in a cost of those services into me getting the Adrian Peterson card on top of some other cards that he wanted from me. And so it ended up turning into, it was like one day in March of 2023, it must have been. So I flew in like Monday morning, or sorry, it was like a Thursday morning, took a flight, connecting flight. So I had one flight, connection, then went to Philly. Then I had to drive from Philly to the vault at the Alt Vault. pick up some cards from him there. Then I also went to the PSA vault, so I had two vault stops. And at this point, I have probably $2 million of cards just in my backpack, going to the airport. And then I flew from Philly to Miami, and then that's sort of where the guy is from. And I met him there and ended up, giving him his cards and getting the Adrian Peterson. I still remember seeing the card for the first time and like still just my jaw hit the floor. And then I actually just flew home that night. So it was like what is that? Like 4 or 5 flights in like less than 24 hours. But I just remember like being so tired and thinking like this is one of the few cards on the planet that I would do this for. Like in my mind, it was worth all that travel because that was again like on the very short list of cards that I never thought I was ever going to see, and then I ended up going home with it. So it was like one of the best days of one of the best and probably craziest days of my collecting career.
I mean, I guess it's good to know the story behind it because it sounds like there's some like blood, sweat, and tears baked into any kind of future potential sale on a card like that because just you look at that card and it has to be one of the cleanest cards of all time. It is just Adrian Peterson. You got to give a lot of love to like his signature, especially with athletes today. With they don't even teach cursive. You see some of these athletes now, and I've actually I had the pleasure of talking to Adrian Peterson about this, and he's a very disciplined person. Like he's very much like takes pride in his signature. He talks a lot about his father and like, the AP handshake is, notorious. He's so a card like this with the shield, the gold, you posted a picture March of 2024 and it is, it's beautiful. It's one of the nicest looking cards of all time, especially from that time period. So, yeah, what a cool card, what a cool story. But that is, like you said, that's on that short list of Grail type pieces. But for a guy that has acquired some cool things, you've seen a lot at alt. Anything stand out to you right now as like one of those ones, like, if you had to pick a Grail card, one you would like to own before, in the next 5-10 years, like anything stand out to you as one of those ones you want to own?
Yeah. I guess like top of my want list. That's a great question. I have actually hit a couple cards off the top of my want list. I've picked up a couple of Danian Tomlinson Shield autos recently. So him and AP were my favorite running backs. So I think that's one that was squarely at the top of my list that I'm pretty happy about. I do think a Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant's my like kind of the main guy that I guess now there's probably other players that I have more in terms of like dollar value in my collection, but I've always considered myself more of a Kevin Durant collector. I don't have a Kevin Durant LOGOMAN auto, so I would really like a Warriors uniform one just because I'm a big Warriors fan. But I know those are going to be really hard to come by now, especially as you see the crazy LOGOMAN sales of all the best players. In terms of one of the players from my scrub domain. I'm very, very much looking for like Ben Gordon or Charlie Villanueva. Those are again pretty random guys. You might not even know who they are, but I actually have one of the two Ben Gordon rookie LOGOMAN, but it's like the worst version of the two. So I would like the true Ben Gordon Ultimate RPA LOGOMAN. And then
what is that? Is that like 04?
04 Ultimate, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are very, very much top of the list. And then another really random card, but I do have like a few baseball superfractors too. So I have like the Giancarlo Stanton superfractor.
Yep.
He's like my favorite baseball player ever. Jason Hayward is another guy that I really collected very aggressively back in that day. He was supposed to be the next big thing. So I actually had a chance to get the Superfractor auto a couple of times back when I was first starting to collect this type of stuff, and it still pains me that I didn't do it. Like it was a reasonable price, and I should have pulled the trigger, but I didn't, and I haven't seen the card pop up in like 4 years now. So
well, that was literally my next question was. I don't know if that would be your answer, if there would be another one. Like, is there any Grail type card you've had a chance to buy, was available to you, purchase price, and you're like, no, and you've regretted not buying?
Honestly, there's not a lot of them because like I feel pretty good about the fact that most of the cards that I have found that are up my alley, I have done it. I've even like probably massively overpaid for some. There's just certain cards that, yeah, when I've seen them, I haven't really let them get out of my sight. In terms of the ones I've passed on, I think that the Hayward is definitely one. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm drawing a blank, but I can't really think of any others that stand out right now.
Well, I guess that's probably a good thing. I mean, you've built the collection you have, and you've done it with, the intuition to, get those deals done. And I think it's probably, like you said, I think that's always the tricky part is like balancing like what is it really worth, like overpaying versus not. You won't know without sending it to auction. You don't know, and when you get to auction, it just takes two people for one card. And I think that's the thing is to build the collection you've built is pretty impressive. But to also say that you there's not a lot you look at and be like, I wish I would have bought that, I think is probably a big plus.
For sure, yeah, and a lot of these cars when I was buying them too, like we've said, is that they don't come to market publicly. So I didn't really have a lot to go off of at the time,
Yep.
and so in essence, I was sort of like creating the market for a lot of these cards because I was
Yep.
probably paying more than anybody else was at the time for these cards. But again, like I was also benefiting from the fact that it was private, so it's not like I was printing comps on all these cards, but it was definitely a challenge to uh, a lot of these times value the cards that I was buying just because there wasn't a lot to go off of. But I,
Sure.
kind of what like I mentioned is I would sort of just compare it to like what's happening in the market. So I would look at, okay, I'm paying $5,000 for a LOGOMAN auto, and then I'm seeing like Prism blues of a player go for $5,000. So in my mind, it just felt like a um,
100%.
good trade off.
I remember doing that again. Bigger conversation for another day, but I remember going to like some of the early Dallas shows when like the Dallas show was the place to be during COVID because it was the only place to be, and
Yeah.
looking at like Lucas Silver tens at $8,000 and seeing Tom Brady 101 shields at $5,000 and just thinking these two things are not equal in rarity and long term collectability. I should probably put my money into one thing over the other. And I remember buying some cards at some of those like November 2020 Dallas shows that were cards that changed the direction of my collecting, like of my collection. So yeah, I think that's a thing I remember catching early in the COVID days. But so tell me, as someone that's been in the hobby as long as you have, how did you go from like a collector, like what drew your interest and all, and how did you ultimately become employee number two at a company that is now a mainstay, big name, and the collectible space?
Yeah, so back in 2020, I was probably 3 years out of college, and so I've been working as a financial analyst for a couple of years. So I worked at like a startup for a couple of years, and then I wanted to move to like a bigger, more traditional company. So I moved to Yelp and was working there for about a year before COVID hit. And like I mentioned, I was still doing cards. I wasn't like dealing like some of these guys are, but I was
Yep.
definitely pretty active with my cards on the side. And I was, definitely more passionate about cards at that time than I was about finance. Like, my job was cool, but I didn't enjoy it that much. It was honestly pretty boring working as a FP&A analyst. And so I wasn't like I couldn't see myself doing that for like the next 40 years, right? So I was definitely a little bit um, on edge about that, nervous about that. Just like, do I see this as a long term career for myself? COVID hit, and because I had recently started at Yelp within the last like 6 months, and obviously Yelp is a business that's operated off of like ad revenue, and so small businesses, when COVID hit, the first thing that they're gonna cut, like these businesses are closing, but a lot of them are gonna cut their ad revenue and their ad
Yep.
spend, right? Or their ad spend. So Yelp got hit really, really hard, and so a lot of people were laid off. I wasn't laid off, but I was put on like unpaid leave for a couple of months, and so I
Yep.
wasn't like working during COVID, and so I started to get a little bit more active with cards just because I had a lot more time. But the current CEO of Alt actually reached out to me during that time, and I've known him for actually a pretty long time. We're both from San Francisco, and so I had met him at card shows probably back to when I was in high school. And so I had sold him cards. We'd always kind of kept in touch. And I think over COVID, we actually had like made a deal recently. So I had sold him like a Kevin Durant card. And so we had been in touch kind of off and on, and then he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, would love to connect with you. Like, I have this idea that I'm thinking of starting here in the space. Would love to get your thoughts on it." And I remember like chatting with him over Zoom, and it was literally just like a PowerPoint of like 4 slides. Like that's how. Obviously, he had this big idea, but it was very simple at the time, right? There wasn't a lot that had come of it, and so he basically pitched me on the idea. Like, I definitely was pretty sold, but a little bit also skeptical, just because this was 2020 and like there wasn't that, like now it's like there's all these companies and all this infrastructure and
Yep. Oh yeah.
money and attention in this space, but at the time it wasn't like that. This was like when the boom was just starting, and so it was definitely a risk, you could say, like to leave a traditional like finance job. But like I said, I wasn't that happy, so that was a big thing that went into it. And then also just trusting him and his vision, knowing that he's a really smart, successful guy, and that he seemed to have my best interest in mind, and was really passionate about having me come on board and be one of the first people on the team. That made a big difference to me, and so yeah, I ended up deciding to do it. And like those early days were really fun, and we can get into that if you want to, but yeah, that's sort of how it all started.
That's awesome. I'm gonna go on a limb. Was Chris one of the other first people up there with you? I would imagine he was probably relatively early.
Yeah, so he was really shortly after me. The CEO basically, Lior, basically asked me like pretty early on, "Hey, we're gonna need another guy just like you." And I immediately knew who to
Yep.
call, because Chris and I go way back. So
Yep. Yep.
and he was also he had just graduated college at the time, and so he was about to start a finance job at, I think, Adobe. And so he was also kind of at a crossroads. I think his parents like really didn't want him to do it, but he kind of had the same experience where he just came over and started talking to Lior and hearing his vision, and I think he got sold pretty quick. And it was really fun to have one of my best friends join
Yeah.
from the early days.
Yeah. Another good guy. Another smart mind in the space. So I remember some of the early days with you two there, and um, yeah, it's I figured he was one of the early guys, but I think what I'm most curious about is, again, not obviously not being a part at all. I don't exactly remember. I just remember like when alt really like came on the scene. Were the early days of alt like was the goal always to be where you are now with like the weekly auctions? Like I know cash, like the cash advance thing has been a big part of alt, whether that be at the national, like Dallas, like some of the bigger shows. I know that's one thing that's been a bigger part of the business. Was the early vision at all, kind of the same of where you are now, or how has the vision and the direction of alt changed from early 2020 to where we are now?
Yeah, I think it's changed drastically, and I think the long term vision of alt is probably still pretty similar to what it was back then, but like the medium short term is very different. I don't know if you remember in the early days, like our identity and persona was like we kind of wanted to be this new age marketplace that we were kind of introducing a lot of new concepts and features to the industry. One of them being lending. But we also had these like new concepts that we wanted to introduce in bidding. Like you had to basically have like account balances on file to bid, and all these things were basically coming from a perspective of like security. Like we wanted to basically mimic like the financial system and sort of act like the bank for sports cards. Like I think that was also kind of like one of our slogans back in the early days.
Yep.
And so, we had kind of this vision of what we were going to introduce and bring to the industry, but it just didn't really land with the customer base. I think people in this industry are very like set in their ways, and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
we have ways that we've been doing things for 20 years, and so for somebody to just come in as a new player on the street and think that you're going to disrupt that, it doesn't always work that well. And so I think we faced a lot of challenges with that. We also tried to do we also wanted to be, like I said, kind of like the technology based company. And so we did try to like capitalize on certain things like NFTs, and sort of tried to like we kind of tried to, I felt like we were doing a lot of things at the beginning, as opposed to like having a narrow, like specific focus. And so we
Sure.
probably like spread ourselves a little bit too thin. And I think eventually we just kind of had to rein it in. I do also think that we like grew very quickly as a company, We received a lot of funding, which was great, but we like hired a lot of people. And I think we just grew too quickly is what it felt like to me at the time. And so I think it was necessary for us to kind of like rein it back in and sort of like just kind of change our course a little bit. And obviously we have these bigger ambitions of going beyond sports cards, and
Sure.
alt kind of stands for alternative assets, right? We want to venture out into other asset classes eventually. But
Yep.
for us to do that, we need to, do sports cards successfully, and we weren't doing that. And so we needed to sort of like look in the mirror and figure it out. Like, hey, like we can't say that we're going to be this company that's like servicing all different kinds of asset classes if we can't even get the first one right.
Yep.
And so I think we just had to simplify it and basically sharpen our focus on a few things that we want to do well, as opposed to trying to do 10 things and spreading ourselves too thin. So
Yeah, I think that's that you say that now. I remember again some of those early days. I know the lending thing was always a really big thing in the market, as like the market just exploded so quickly. And I know there was a few companies or folks out there that were big into that. But as you look at, like, again, just because we're short on time, I think the most important, maybe not most important, but I think one of the most curious things I look at now is, like, you talk about all standing for alternative investments. You've mentioned other collectibles, like you mentioned NFTs. If you're sitting here now kind of like predicting where you think this goes next, what do you see coming for, like, alt? Because you have built something really, really, we use alt all the time. Like, it's a big brand. It is a big part of the industry now. What do you look at for the future with alt? Like, what's next?
for sure, yeah. I mean, I think looking at where we are now in December 2025, and looking back a year or 2 years from now, like we've come a
Yep.
long way. But I think that we still have a long way to go. So I think like I was saying is we need to get it right in sports cards. I think we've made a lot of progress there.
Yep.
I think a lot of people always say that our technology, our data is probably the best in the industry. So we kind of want to hang our hats on that. But there's still a lot, like there's a lot of features that we're talking about internally. Like there's still a lot more that we want to do and we know we can do before we ultimately go into those next asset classes. So I will say that, that's, like I said, it is our vision. I don't look up and think that we're going to be there by next year. Maybe the year after it's possible, but I mean, this space is growing a lot. I think the
Yep.
competition's only going to get tougher, and
Yep. For
so I
sure.
think we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot by going into something a little bit too early. When I think we're now just now starting to get a lot of really good momentum in cards, and I think there's a lot of things we can still do to gain more market share and to differentiate ourselves. I think we need to focus on that, and that's probably where the focus will be for the short term before we do look to expand into other asset classes.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's great. I think, like you said, there's a lot of momentum in the space now. Like, the market is going in the right direction, and I feel like is healthier than, like, the first time. The first boom, the early COVID days where everything just went up. And I think there's a lot of opportunity now if done the right way. And I think I think it's only up, from here for all. So excited to see what you guys, build and, ultimately do next. But I could keep asking you questions and keep uncovering more. And I love learning from people who have built the collections you've built and done the things you've done. I admire that tremendously. But for the sake of time, like, we do have to wrap up. But I want to ask one question, is, prefacing everything I just said, if you were starting over today, you were starting completely over from scratch, what would be the one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Collecting wise, or
Anything, whether in the space, collecting, investing, yeah, any
yeah.
piece of advice at all.
Yeah, I would say, don't be so focused on what everybody else is after, or what other people might think about your collecting style.
Oh yeah, that's great
Because I
advice.
think in the early days, like, yeah, you kind of see it happening rampantly in the hobby. Like it's almost like hot potato, right? Everybody's chasing the same thing, but there's so many opportunities for you to like create your own strategy and find opportunities that other people may not be paying attention to. And at the end of the day, like you want to collect something that you believe in, that you have a connection to, because if not, like you're going to buy something and then 2 weeks later, you're going to be like, all right, why did I buy this? Right. So I really think that is like really great advice, is to just find something that is meaningful to you. Because at the end of the day, you're doing this for you, right? It is great
Yep.
to, make money when you can, but at the end of the day, like you want to enjoy it, and you want to have a sense of fulfillment in what you're buying. And I think once you figure that out, it really does like renew the excitement that you have in this
Yep.
industry. And I think, yeah, I'd say just like kind of follow your collecting heart is sort of what I would say. It really is like refreshing, and it just adds a lot of excitement to the collecting journey.
Yep. And uh, I think that's crucial. If you collect what you like, you'll never be disappointed when the cards go up or cards go down. Like it's at the end of the day, this is meant to be a hobby, and I think if you try to follow the fads and the trends, like you can get burnt pretty quickly on that. So yeah, I think collecting what you like, I just man, great advice. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I mean, cards wise, pretty much just Instagram, Dars Cards 35KD. So yeah, I'm always down to talk cards. Always looking to buy some of the, like I said, some of that fun, obscure stuff from the mid 2000s. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and look forward to more conversations in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. And like Darius said, if you guys can, make sure you check him out. I promise you, it is definitely worth the follow. So best of luck, and again, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Stock Watch with the one, the only Gabe card stacks. And I know we'll get to the elephant in the room. I came on last week's episode after smacking that terrible, overrated, no good school up north, just to be let down in Indianapolis at the Big Ten title. So don't worry, that is coming. I'm sure I'll hear about it on this episode. I mean, as much as I, talked last week, it just, man, a little bit of a letdown. A little bit of a letdown with a 10-point L. So we'll get into that here in a second. But my friend, Gabe Card Stacks, the one, the only, how are we doing?
I'm great. I love championship weekend and the chaos, all the drama that ensues. A little disappointed like Friday and then Saturday up until like the evening, up until the Big Ten championship and the ACC finish. Everything, blowouts in the SEC and the Big 12. And then we get the college
Mm-hmm.
football playoff bracket reveal with a lot of drama, a lot of controversy.
Oh,
I've got
yeah.
got some takes,
Yep.
particularly about Notre Dame. And then we've got the transfer portal is roaring. So just a lot to discuss, some guys to talk about. I'm ready.
A lot of opportunity. Yeah, we're gonna get into that. So let's just kick it off and let's just get right into Stock Watch. I think that's probably best to just start there before we start getting into, some opportunities around transfer portal and CFP and, stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, jumping right into it, Fernando Mendoza. It's hard to
Mm,
argue anything other
mm,
than that. I saw
man.
yesterday at DC. I don't know where it ended, but there was a gold auto at 480. I think base autos were at like 180. Just everything combined into one. Everything you could possibly ask for when it comes to prospecting. A Big Ten championship, the number one seed. People are believing in Indiana now. Number one in the draft, the Heisman odds favorite right now. Not that he was cheap at product release, but
Yep,
definitely
yep.
a huge burst of steam right there. So if you want to ride with Indiana buying to the peak market, go for it. If you want to ride it into the number one, draft pick for April, we'll see. A lot could happen in the college football playoffs, so nothing set in stone, but definitely just without a doubt the hottest thing on the market right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to argue that. Um, they certainly proved they were for real this weekend. Number one pick, like you said, it's his Heisman at this point. I mean, Vandy will do everything they can to make the case on why Pavia should win. He's not going to. It's a lock at this point that Mendoza's going to win it. likely the favorite to be the number 1 pick in the draft, and I think they're 1A or 1B in betting odds to win the national title. So yeah, a lot of optimism right now around Mendoza. I think buying his stuff right now is an indication to you. If you're buying them, it would be, talking to who is buying them. Like, it's an indication that you believe he is going to be up over the next, 6 months. National title, Heisman, number 1 pick. Like, you see an upward trajectory there because, like you said, he's not been cheap. He was one of the top chases. He was the top chase in Bowman Chrome U when it came out. So, you've got $510 Kahuna autos. You've got Bowman's best jersey autos, golds doing $500. You've got base autos doing $200. Like, this is not a cheap guy to invest in, to buy. This is for Hoosiers fans who, haven't won a Big Ten title in, 80 years. Like, this is for those guys to buy. This is for the, the IU faithful, or the people that believe Fernando Mendoza is going to win the Heisman, win the national title, and be a number 1 pick. But you'd have to imagine some of that price is baked in there because he's in a league of his own right now for sales.
Yeah, no doubt. So, just a hefty buy-in price from the start. So I'm going to stay out of it, but I will be watching that for sure. All right, number 2. Guy has not ever been on the list. I don't think I've been a doubter of Georgia this entire time. I don't know why I should have trusted Kirby Smart. Alabama's just been limping over the last few weeks, it seems. So Gunnar Stockton, I'm going for number 2, just capping off a 12-1 season now. Just SEC champions, avenge their 1 loss on the season. I've said this before. I feel like his prices weren't like the craziest compared to how strong Georgia buyers are and just the consistent dominance that Georgia has had. I just feel like he's been, not that I would buy, but I felt like he was a smidge underpriced for, I guess, where we were in the market. So his stuff is definitely going to be on the uptick for sure heading into the playoffs. Again, it took me 13 games, but I'm in on Georgia. I'm done doubting them, so I'm going to go Gunnar Stockton there.
Yeah, Gunnar Stockton has some big sales on some of the better stuff. You've got, a Sapphire Selections red auto to 5 at, north of $650. You've got a Bowman's Best black insert on card auto at north of $550. He's not a cheap guy. This reminds me a lot of Carson Beck. That's who this reminds me of. Is Carson Beck, was at Georgia. His stuff sold well. Like, you got to give, you said it, like, Georgia sells well. Like, you got to give some credit to the Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs for, the fans for supporting their guys, because Georgia stuff moves. It is one of the better selling college stuff, especially the elite Georgia stuff. Like, there are definitely some big time dog collectors out there because, this is not uncommon for a Georgia Bulldog guy to sell. Like I mentioned, Carson Beck is one of them. So yeah, Variation Auto red to 5 sold a week ago for $800. Variation Auto to 25 does $340. He's got some elite sales. I mean, Kahuna Auto 187. That's a strong sale for a guy like Stockton. But it also shows you, again, the discrepancy between a guy like Gunnar Stockton and a guy like Fernando Mendoza, because the last Mendoza Kahuna Auto was 510, and here we sit with Stockton feeling pretty good at an auction, but 187.50.
Yeah. And I think one thing to note about Stockton, I don't know if he's ever been like hyped up as an NFL guy. So maybe we haven't even like reached that point in the offseason, or like, we saw Drew Aller go from like a quarterback to like, hey, he could have been number 1 if he left last year. Might we see that with a Gunnar Stockton or somebody when we go through these playoffs? So keep an eye on that. All right, last one. The rest of the games, it was like Texas Tech didn't have like a huge guy who took over. It was, I guess Darian Mensah, shout out them for winning the ACC. But I went back to an old friend that we had in the earlier weeks, Ruben Bain. His stuff is back up. There was a little lull in the middle of the season, but he was, at least prior to this weekend, mocked at number 1. Now Mendoza taking that, but still had some pretty strong sales, pretty high floor just to get into a Ruben Bain auto. Now in the college football playoffs, everybody's watching it. So just every single big play, I feel like, is under a magnifying glass. So, I mean, you get a solid strip sack, a scoop and score, something with this cat. Everyone's going to be all over it. So wanted to go back to Ruben Bain there.
How about 2 weeks ago, Bowman's Best 2024 red auto PSA 10 with an inscription on it, $12.50.
Really?
$12.50. Red auto to 10. Yeah. Big time auto sales. his stuff is not cheap. You got Bowman's Best autos doing 30, 5+ shipped. Gold shimmers from Chrome at over 80. You've got a green first auto doing 75. Like auto refractor to 150 at 30. PSA 9 yellow at 80. Like, that's, again, that doesn't sound crazy, but for a guy that is a defensive player, it is not, common for a defensive player that has multiple autos out there from Bowman products to do $75 or $80. It's pretty rare. I can probably count on, two hands the number of defensive players that have sold for that kind of dollar amount over the last, couple seasons we've had, Bowman products. Like he's definitely, higher on the, on that list. Cooper DeJean comes to mind. Travis Hunter, if you count him as a corner, comes to mind. Coy Parrish is usually in those conversations. Bain is another good one. I've got to be forgetting a couple of them, but again, that's the fact that it's not, I'm not ripping 50 of them off the rip is probably a sign that that's an anomaly.
Yeah. Yeah. My only comparison would have been Cooper DeJean, and that was because he wasn't in the Chrome set. He only had Sapphire autos, so that also played into it. That's about it. Maybe a James Pierce early in the offseason would have been.
Yeah, early. Before the start of last season.
Yeah. When
Pierce was like in that number 1 pick talk, his stuff was crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, he's probably number 2 behind DeJean, I would say. So all right, shall we go to down?
Oh man. It's gonna get ugly. Who we got?
No, you might be, you'll be okay. You're safe here, but I'm very happy about this one. I'm just a sick human, but Ryan Williams, he is just getting clowned on the internet, and just from the beginning, I've just never been a huge fan. I get it, he's like super talented, all this stuff, cool spin moves, but just his Bowman autos at the end of the offseason were like $120, $150 at times. I think they've probably dropped closer to like 50 or 60 or so. His high end,
they're higher than you think.
Really?
Last raw sales $89.
Wow, that's impressive. Congrats to the seller on that
December 6th.
one.
Yeah, shout out Card Lighter, $89 on December 6th.
Wow. Well, man, that kind of stumps my stock down there, because that's still pretty
that's
strong.
That's still a 30. That's still a 30% drop.
Yeah, for sure. But I would have guessed. I feel like sometimes at auctions you probably get them for like 65 or 70, somewhere around there. But yeah, he's getting clowned on. He's in the playoffs. Now this is going to be classic Ryan Williams, just stinky all year, and then he's going to pull off some incredible catch in the playoffs, and then everyone's going to be like
six for 130 and a touch.
Yes, yeah, that's just the Gabe special as well. So, but yeah, I'm a Jeremy Bernard guy. I thought that was like the way better value this offseason. His autos were like $10. What was great was that Ryan Williams dropped that catch.
We were texting each other. We were texting each other when this happened. I was watching the game, the SEC championship, and Ryan Williams beautiful ball, just like big old, oven mitt, just right through it, just drops. And I text you and I'm like, dude, your boy Ryan Williams just dropped another one. And the next play they ran, Jeremy Bernard scored. The next play they ran. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, this is the Gabe special.
Yeah, but no, just you can mark it down now. He's gonna go off against Oklahoma or something, and then he'll be back on stock up. So that's just how it works these days. Okay, number 2. Hate to pick on my guy, but just things have just not looked great. He did not look great. Just the whole team. I get it, there were injuries, but I'm going Ty Simpson here because he, like 3-4 weeks ago, he was like number 1 potential in the NFL draft. Now it's like, all right, son, go back to school. And like,
I think it was right before right when you came to town.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough for Ty Simpson believers for sure right now. Just they didn't look good against Eastern Illinois. Was pretty against Auburn. You get punked versus Georgia right here. And a lot of debate on should they even be in the college football playoffs. I know we'll get to that, but there was a point where his color was hundreds of dollars, and now I'm sure there's definitely going to be some auctions out there that go way low, just 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, Brian's got a card ladder here, and he's kind of scrolling through some stuff, and they're not all bad, all things considered. Non-first autos still do $25 to $35. Like, that's still pretty good for what that is. Yeah, it's definitely been a tougher month for Bama. Again, you come back to like right before you got here, they were, you know, one of the better teams. He was in the Heisman talk for sure. It was going to come down to the end, and then they lose. Who did they lose to that weekend? It wasn't a very good. Was it Missouri? Who did
Uh,
they lose to when you were in
Oklahoma,
town? It might have
Oklahoma.
been. Was it Oklahoma the first time? It wasn't Vandy. It was like middle of November. Oklahoma, yeah, by 2. Yeah, so perfect rematch just in time.
Yep.
Yeah, so they lost to Oklahoma by 2 at home. And then it was like kind of all downhill, and like it seems like they've been leaking. I think you had said it, like just like leaking for a little while, like just like running out of gas. Like the Bama game, I mean, 28-7, not even a competitive game. They've lost to they've lost to Oklahoma and Georgia in the last month. It just we'll see what kind of Bama team we get in the playoff, but yeah, I mean, Ty Simpson might again could be an opportunity if the way his market has moved, because he's definitely going to be down from mid season where his stuff was you know definitely a lot higher.
Yeah. Now, I will say I will take a Ryan Williams 4 touchdown game if it means Ty Simpson gets 4 touchdowns in the playoffs. So I would make that trade off for sure. But yeah, I'm hoping for the best. I don't like that matchup. I don't like either team. We'll talk about it, but yeah, that's where I'm at there. All right, last one. Not necessarily like, hey, this guy's like been not great because he hasn't played, but just kind of like a
Yep.
think about it. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna go Evan Stewart, Oregon. Not one of my guys. He was like the number one wide receiver a couple years ago with Luther Burden and Tetro McMillan. So he had a lot of hype coming in. He was at Texas A&M, kind of injured all the time, suspended, left the team, goes to Oregon. Was okay there, then gets hurt, and they're like, hey, he might return for the playoffs. So his stuff is down bad, but might it be an opportunity to buy? I don't know. I do have some myself stashed away just because people forgot about him this year. But I know like
Yep.
orange autos are going low. Like it's a pretty low buy-in for some of his stuff for being the potential number one guy as a pass catcher for Oregon. I guess they have Sadiq, but I don't hate it.
Yeah.
But he's down.
They also have Decorian Moore, and again, I think
Yeah,
Decorian Moore is probably the new shiny thing there. I mean, Sadiq is the best tight end in college football, but it's yeah, I mean, like you said, this might be a potential value box play. Bowman's best autos are $6 to $10. They're not very expensive. Orange Sapphire Oregon auto just at $20 at the end of November. Um, this is one that's kind of out of sight, out of mind, so might be an opportunity for a play. We'll see, but yeah, from where Evan Stewart stuff was a year ago, it is definitely a whole lot different.
yeah. So I don't hate it. Like it's just cheap enough. He's always had hype. His entire career. He's coming back big time. It's another Gaby classic. Like last year, I think he scored in the Rose Bowl or had like some crazy catches on Ohio State. Not that that was like close, but yeah, it'd be another Gaby special where like this kid goes off for 2 touchdowns, and it's like, oh, he's been dragging this guy for 2 years, and then when everyone's watching, he's good. So that's where I'm at. All right, value bin. I wanted to make you feel better, Ryan. So
Oh wow, here we go.
I'm going Sunny Styles for value bin.
Great choice.
Um,
Great choice.
so the season that Arvell Reese is having, that's what I was thinking. Like I thought that was gonna be Sunny Styles. I just like his size, everything about him. And like
Yep.
he's all over like draft Twitter right now, where it's like he's like potentially like top 15 in the draft right now, where it's like wow, his film against Indiana is insane. So I'm happy about that. His autos are like $30-ish, and you just I get it. Some people might just buy it because it's Ohio State and it's out of a scarce product, but nice little value play find. You think he's climbing up the board, so I wish I went a little bit heavier on him for sure.
Yeah, Sonny Styles, again, I've been talking about that defense. Defense played its part, right? 13 points outside of, an important catch, on third down later in the game. Like, defense played pretty well. I mean, to give up 13 points to a top 5 scoring offense is pretty good. Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese is the best linebacker pairing in America. Like, they're the real deal. They're going to be top. I would tell you they end up being top 10 picks, but I mean, Ohio State's got 4 first rounders on the defensive side of the ball with Downs, Reese, Styles, and Caden McDonald. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go. It's obviously going to be a big fit thing. But yeah, with those 4 and Carnell Tate, the draft's going to be a lot of fun for, a Buckeye fan. There's no doubt this dude's, he's built for it, right? You probably got to see it up close and personal. You obviously see it if you watch Ohio State games, but up close and personal, Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles are built like NFL linebackers. They're grown men playing college football. Like, those dudes are going to start a year from now. They're going to be playing on, I'm trying to think of the fringe play. The Browns might take them. Dallas is in that range. Like, Sonny Styles might be a Dallas Cowboy, and we might be sitting here, a year from now talking about this dude's all over the place. He's getting 10 tackle games. He's up for Rookie of the Year. These guys should be playing in the NFL now. They're just, still in Columbus. So yeah, he's the real deal. But again, like you mentioned, the Onnit stuff is his only auto right now, so he doesn't have a ton. I would imagine a lot of people see Ohio State and they're like, oh, cool, let me at least check. TBD, but I think that's honestly one of the sneaky things about the Onnit set is there's not a lot of some of those guys in the Onnit set don't sign a lot of other places. So Jermaine Matthews is one, Sonny Styles is one, like Luke Montgomery on the line is one. There's a few different Buckeyes in there that don't sign in other products, so might be some opportunity just in general with some of the Onnit stuff in value boxes if people don't necessarily know what it is. And that goes across all, other teams and other sports. Like, there are definitely athletes in other team sets that don't sign a ton, so it's not just an Ohio State thing. I think there's a value box play on some of the Onnit stuff if you can find it, because again, that's where your opportunities are to find guys or girls, that's the cool thing, that don't sign in a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. Or we had Emmett Johnson, Nebraska, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Nebraska kid.
So
just declared.
Yeah, just declared. So that'll be interesting. Not a lot of like high end running backs. I'm sure we'll have like a lot of draft talk in future episodes. But after like Jeremiah Love, I don't know what's gonna happen. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right. You have anything about the Heisman you want to say? Like, case here, or are we moving on?
Yeah,
to the
I mean,
CFP
I'd like to, after the title of the last one, where it was like with some hot takes, all caps, I'd like to throw another hot take out there. I'm just not like a Mendoza. Like, I'm not a best player, best team, or quarterback, best team guy. I want the guy who's going to carry a team. And I feel like if we're going to give Fernando Mendoza the Heisman last year, we should have given it to Curtis Rourke last year. All right, like that was like the complete turnaround of just the century, and he got no love for it, and he was the quarterback, right? So it's like, why, now is Mendoza, I get it, number one, and like they achieved it, they went undefeated, but I'm just, I'd rather defend Curtis Rourke, I guess, and say he got, the short end of the stick there. But Pavia, I think he just carried Vanderbilt. I think you could put a couple of different quarterbacks at Indiana, and they'd still, be able to do what they do. So that's kind of my take there. Put Mendoza on Vanderbilt. What does that look like? I get it, different skill sets, but just Fernando Mendoza, talking about a college football player and what he does, I love it. So there's that. And then Jeremiah Love just can take over a game on any touch. So that's my Heisman take.
Yeah, Jeremiah Love, again, has always been my argument. Like, he's the best running back in America. Again, I think it just comes down to, and like we'll get into this with the CFP selection. Are we talking best? Are we talking most deserving? Like, what are we talking about when we give this award? Because if it's best college football player in the country, Jeremiah Smith is the best football player in the country. Like, this isn't a debate by anybody that watches college football. Like, you see the catch in the Hail Mary at the end of the game? Like, the dude caught the ball. Like, he is the best player in college football. Jeremiah Love is the best running back in college football. Again, if we give it out to most, best player and best team, Mendoza's he's gonna win it. Like, they're undefeated. They went undefeated in one of the 1A, 1B power conference in college football. Didn't lose a single game. Has multiple, ranked wins. Went to did they go to Penn State or Penn State go to them? They went to Penn State. It was a noon. No. They went to Penn State. I think they went to Oregon as well.
Sounds
pretty sure they went to Oregon. Yeah, they did. They won in Oregon by 10. They won at Penn State. Listen, I'm not trying to make a case, I don't want it to be, too over the top, but he did what he was supposed to do. I mean, he beat won in hard places. Like, that's a good team. He should win the Heisman Trophy. He's the best player on the best team right now. Again, if it's best college football player, Jeremiah Smith should win this award. You can't convince me there's a more talented like college football player in the country than Jeremiah. He's in a world of his own. Again, that's not what the award is. It's, who best player, best team is usually the argument I make on it. And I think right now that's Mendoza, and I don't think it's going to be a debate. I think Pavia will steal a little bit more. I always said this. We talked about this before. I know we're going to get into CFP in a minute. I always thought the loser would go to 3, the winner would go to 1, and Georgia would move up to 2 in the CFP rankings. I just think they said something about not doing that because Miami could have like a home game in the Orange Bowl. I was looking into it, but I think that was more with the bowl schedule, like who they got. But regardless, Ohio State stayed at 2. I thought they would drop to 3. I think that's going to be the same thing that's going to happen on the Heisman Trophy. Like, I think Sayin will get 3. I think Pavia will get 2. I think Mendoza will win it. And I think Jeremiah Love is great, but he only had like 1,300 rushing yards this year. Like, J.K. Dobbins ran for 2,000 yards and didn't get it. Like, it was just an underwhelming year for the Heisman Trophy. Like, there's nobody putting up 5,000 plus yards, 40 plus, 45 plus touchdowns. Like, I think Mendoza has the best case for it. I think your argument's fair. Like, take this person off this. That's what people always said about Sayin. Like, take Sayin off the Buckeyes and put this guy on it. Like, they're still winning a bunch of games. You can't penalize the guy for doing what he's supposed to do. He went to places. He led. He had some big throws. Like, the Omar Cooper catch at Penn State's the second greatest catch I've ever seen live. Second greatest catch I've ever seen. OBJ rookie year catch is always going to be the best catch I've ever seen. David Tyree's probably pretty high on that list. And the Omar Cooper catch at Penn State. That's insane. It's amazing he caught that. JSN did one in COVID years. Couple that come to mind. That Omar Cooper's, that catch is crazy. So yeah, Mendoza's going to win it. I don't think it's going to be close, and he's the Heisman Trophy winner.
I have a question for you. So let's say Ohio State won 16-13. So you're like best player, best team. Do you think Jeremiah would have had a case to win the Heisman? Oh, like
a case, sure, but it would have gone to. We actually talked about this here at halftime when it was like closer, like in saying hadn't done a ton, he threw a touchdown. If Mendoza lost a closer game, I honestly think if Ohio State would have won 16-13, they would have given it to Mendoza.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Sayin would have needed to throw for like 250 and 3, like he did against Michigan, and he at halftime I think he had $110 and a touchdown. So I think in a closer game like that, I would have favored Mendoza, and they won it anyways. So yeah, I think he'll. It's not a think. He's gonna win it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I would love to see Pavia, but I mean, it's hard not to like Fernando Mendoza. He's just so goofy and just like, I don't know.
Goofy, man.
he's just.
Yeah, I mean, he went on the McAfee show. Like again, like obviously, Saturday night I was not very nice. Like I was obviously a little disappointed. But dude, he goes on the Fernando Mendoza, or he goes on the Pat McAfee show, and he's talking about the Caden Curry hit and clean hit. He's funny. Like it's again, it's kind of like the Signetti thing. I talked about this with some of my, we've got a couple guys here that like IU. So, I heard about it all weekend. But it's like Signetti. It's like, when he's not on my team, don't like him. Don't want anything to do with him. Nothing to do with him. But I wouldn't be upset if he was leading my team. Like, that's kind of how I feel about Mendoza. Like, right now, I have some choice words for him and Signetti. I would love a rematch. I mean, I'd be unbearable. But, if he was the leader of my team, heck yeah, dude. It's us versus you. Like, oh man, I'm riding for that dude. He seems like the real deal. So yeah, definitely. Again, you talked about it with the Rourke thing. Single greatest turnaround in the history of college football. It's not even close. That team was winning. What? Wasn't there like a stat they won like 3 games in 3 years or 3 games in a year? Like they were winning no games at all. I mean, they've lost 2 times in 2 seasons. They're the number 1 team in college football. Indiana.
Yeah, I mean,
this isn't like Penn State. This isn't like a team that's been close. Ohio State is like, they're the second losingest program in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
What I was gonna say. I think it was. They should build the statue tomorrow. They should build the statue tomorrow.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm with it. I support it, and that's why I want justice for Curtis Rourke. He was part of it.
All right. Well, you say you support it, but how do we feel about supporting, the 12-team CFP bracket? We're, Sunday, selection show. It's 10 a.m. local time for you. They start announcing the teams. How did you feel when they were all announced?
I mean, I guess okay-ish with the results just because of the system we have in place. I'm more just upset with the system and why we have 2 group of 5 teams, and that's just disappointing for me. Where it's like James Madison, like we've got Texas, we've got Vanderbilt, we've got Notre Dame who gets left out, we've got all these teams that you just rather have over JMU, and we'll see what that looks like. They're 21.5 point dogs, but I was just bothered by that the most. Now, in terms of, what the actual result was compared to like, hey, who got left out and what everything looked like, I think it is fairly annoying for BYU to get left out. Their only 2 losses are to the number 4 team in the country, which, it's like, I think if you argue about like hey, Texas, we went up to Ohio State and, you're discrediting us for playing a tough game, we should just go play some cupcakes. Well, that kind of was what BYU just happened to fall into with their schedule, and their 2 losses were to, the number 4 team in the country. So a little bit sad for BYU, but I get it. Like if you put them in there, I don't think they can really compete with a lot of these teams. They're just not quite there yet. And then you go Texas, I guess the 3 losses, whatever. But then you go Notre Dame, which I guess, was the big controversy because they were ahead of Miami the week before, and, what changed then. Yep. It is a tough look when, at the start of the show, like the number 2 criteria was head-to-head wins, where it's like, all right, well, like we can't put this up front and center and then have Notre Dame over Miami. So I get it. Like, That's probably the right thing to do, I guess.
Yeah.
You had your 2 shots on your playoff team. Granted, they were the first 2 weeks, but yeah, I do feel bad for them just because you got okey doked basically, in the last week's poll compared to this week's poll. So that one, it is tough. But if I may just go to the opt out, I think that's very weak sauce. I think you play in your bowl game. You take your Pop-Tart bowl. I don't want to hear Marcus Freeman ever say he's ready to compete. I don't care that it was a team vote. You should want your guys. I'll take my guys, and we're going to go compete. Put the ball anywhere. We're going to go play. We're going to develop our young guys. We have like 20 early enrollees that can get some practice, and they just don't care. They're seniors. They already played their last game. You're telling me not one person on that team wanted to play? No single fan wanted to watch that team play? Sad. Weak sauce by Notre Dame. I'll get off my soapbox.
Lots to unpack there. I think you said it best around, who they selected, and, it's like, it makes sense because I think when you look at it based on the criteria, it does. It makes sense. Miami beat Notre Dame head to head. You play the game. It has to matter. Why they did it the last week and not the week prior doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If we thought, we were going to put Miami in, like, why weren't they ranked ahead of them all the time? Like, why did Miami not re-jump them? Like, I think that's kind of the tricky piece. Again, I don't love the fact that, like you said, that JMU is in there. Like, I would rather do like just top 12 AP poll on this than anything else, just because I'm like, I look at this and I'm like, I love that for Tulane and I love that for James Madison's. Like, this isn't the NCAA basketball tournament. This isn't 64 teams. JMU and Tulane are not winning the national title. They're not. I don't know what to tell you. Like, they might win a game. Might. Maybe. They're not. Tulane's not beating Ole Miss, Georgia, and one of the bottom 3 teams, Ohio State, A&M. Like, that's not. This isn't a Tulane versus Texas Tech national title year. Like, it's not going to happen. So it's why? Like, give them a great bowl. Like, I'm all for that. But like, let's quit pretending that like this shouldn't be the top 12 teams in the country. We shouldn't just rank them that way, and we should just put those teams in. Because if you take JMU and Tulane out, now we have Notre Dame and Texas, Notre Dame and Vandy, Notre Dame and BYU, BYU Vandy, BYU Texas, Texas Vandy. I don't care what it is. Pick any of those schools. Like, that's a much better, like, again, are we looking for quality? Or like, it's always the argument, best or deserving. Who's the best? Who's the most deserving? And that's, if it's the best team, Notre Dame would have been in. You can't tell me no. If you watch college football, you can't tell me Notre Dame's not a top 5 or 6 team in the country. It's one of the best teams in America. We got 12 of them playing for a national title, and Notre Dame's not in it. That's crazy. I'm not upset about it, because if that meant Miami got left out, and that was a Notre Dame, and I had to play the winner of Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Wouldn't want to do that. Wouldn't want to play that team. I'd much rather play Miami or A&M over. We might lose. We might. I'd much rather play either of those two over Notre Dame for sure. Sign me up. Right? I also believe when we start getting into some of these changes at CFP, they should be reseeded after the first round. Should reseed. Georgia's got to play Ole Miss or A&M, or I'm sorry, Ole Miss or Tulane. I would argue Alabama, Oklahoma is a tougher game than that. Like, especially if Tulane wins. Tulane, Georgia. Georgia beat them by 3 scores. So I just look at it as like the advantage for the one should be the easier path. It's the best team. They should have the easier path. They shouldn't, it happened to Oregon last year. Ohio State was the 8 seed, played 8-9. Tennessee, Ohio State. Ohio State boat raced Tennessee. Ohio State plays Oregon, the Rose Bowl, smacks them. Shouldn't have those opportunities, especially because those teams are like, if you got a team like Notre Dame is one of the best in the country and you're putting them there, you're going to punish, the 1 or the 2 seed and just like, hey, best of luck. We got this hot, hungry team in, the last spot. Now they're going to, they're going to give you a little bit of a challenge. I don't know. I like the idea of reseeding them. I think it should be first round, then we reseed, and then, the first round I look is like the play-in game. You host the home playoff game. That's where you learn a lot about those teams. It's great for college football. Great for that city. Awesome for that school. Love. 10 out of 10. That is home games. 10 out of 10. It's the coolest thing ever that they do. Tennessee, the SEC, the big bad SEC had to come up to Columbus in December in the freezing cold and get boat raced. Sign me up for that. Mm-hmm. Like, again, when Michigan comes back, when Penn State comes back, like Ohio State, like if Ohio State ever hosts a home game, like when those teams are back and you got to send Alabama up to the big house in December, and Ole Miss has got to go to Happy Valley next year and play, Matt Campbell at Penn State and the Nittany Lions, sign me up. I'll watch that game tomorrow. I would put Penn State in if it meant one of these SEC teams had to go up there right now, like Ethan Grunkmeyer. I'd watch it like that. I think the first round is really, really cool. I just think we should reseed after.
Yeah, no, I've never even considered that. I don't hate that idea at all, and I would support it. But also, I'm also maybe a hot take. I'm okay if we go back to 4 teams.
That's a hot take. No. Give me the 12.
Yeah,
I love the 12.
Mean, I don't mind the 12, especially if we can reform this next year and get this group of. I love group of 5 football. I do. I'll watch Kennesaw State and Georgia Southern any Wednesday of the week. I promise you that. But I can't get behind it. But if a Tulane or a JMU or any of these group of 5 schools were to ever beat, I guess if JMU beats Oregon in that chance, I think that would hit harder than a 16 seed beating a 1 seed. Like I would.
I don't know, man. 16 over 1's happened twice.
Sure, yes, but like I would immediately flip and be like, all right, let's go JMU. Let's run this thing, and they might get crushed next week. But I'm just like that's just like where my mind is, where I'm like, to your point, where it's like, give me Texas or Notre Dame, where like those teams could legitimately win a championship. I don't think anyone, Tulane or JMU, they're not winning.
Might not win a game.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. But like, man.
Yeah, you just can't tell me Texas versus Oregon or Notre Dame versus Oregon in Eugene is not a better game than James Madison going there.
Yeah, for sure. But man, if a group of 5 team wins like a JMU, that would be pandemonium.
Yeah. Pandemonium. If Gabe Karzaks was in charge of it, who would have been the 12 teams? First 8 or 9 are probably locks.
Yeah.
Who would have been your last couple?
I just would have I guess if I had to rank them, I would have kept everything the same. I'd go 11 Notre Dame, 12 Texas. And honestly, we haven't even really talked about like Alabama. And like some people are like, are they like that's their 3rd loss? They didn't even drop in the polls. All the losers of the championship games dropped a spot except for them. They are, it looks like they're running out of gas. That one I'm kind of okay with, or like at least drop them down a spot or something. But I guess I would keep Alabama. But why I say like, hey, go back to 4 teams. I really don't care about Ole Miss. I don't care about Oklahoma. Alabama looks like they're struggling. I don't care about Tulane or JMU at all. Texas A&M, I'm intrigued. But if a 4-team playoff were to happen, I only feel bad for Oregon, where I'm like, dang, that would have been nice to get them in.
Yeah, I think out of the 8 teams you look at that are playing in the first round, you really look at those teams and say 3 of those teams can win a national title right now. The way they're playing football, 3 of those you could say could compete. If you said A&M, Miami, or Oregon won a national title, I don't think anybody would be like surprised. Maybe Miami, Texas A&M, they've looked a little like shaky at times. Oregon has 1 loss and it's the number 1 team in the country. The other teams, like, nobody's like, Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss. Tulane's not going to win a game. Oklahoma, Alabama are SEC teams, but they're not like the cream of the crop SEC teams. One of them's got to play Indiana. I'm taking the Hoosiers. Oregon seems like a, formidable foe. Like, I think they're going to do something. The rest of them, I'm like, I just, you got 4 real contenders, 1 through 4. You've got a couple guys in the other group, but Notre Dame, I don't know what the lines would have been, but I would imagine Notre Dame would have been favored over every one of those teams except for Oregon.
Yeah, I'd agree.
A neutral field, they would have been on the road, so I wonder how much that would have changed again. Neither here nor there. One thing I do want to ask, I know we've talked about this before, but you get to an opportunity, we've kind of hinted at this for a little while in this podcast. We're going to be keeping an eye out on these games. But we're going to get a guy like a Cam Scatterbo who comes alive, during the playoff. A Matthew Golden who kind of comes out of nowhere. Give me a couple names that we're keeping an eye on as we head into CFP season. We've got another podcast to record before then officially, but, just quick glimpse into it. Who are we looking at?
Okay. I've got a couple. I prepped a list of every single player who has cards that's going to be in the playoffs. So going off that, there's a couple. I'm looking for like electric guys, big upside, just big playmaker. Like I said, like everything's under a magnifying glass for the next 3 weeks or however long this tournament lasts. I guess a month. But right now, I would go one guy, and maybe this is just, Georgia, just, good vibes right now for me. I'm in. Nate Frazier. Dog, literally just a dog. He's out of modern day high school. He was a star. He was like the starter last season as a true freshman. He started the season this year. He was kind of in the doghouse. He had some fumbling issues in the middle of the season. Looked great versus Alabama, and now I'm just like, you know what? I think this guy. His prices are, $20. I think for the floor, which, it's not like. It's not a $10 auto, but $20 I think is a little bit more significant. But I think like he could just probably take over a game. Just let the big dogs eat. Let the O-line do their thing. And
a lot of dogs in this chat. A lot of dogs in this one. Dog house. Let the big dogs eat.
Mm-hmm. I might start barking. So I like Nate Frazier, and I think he could be like a dude who just takes the country by storm. 123 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just carrying people. So that's where I'm going to go.
I love that idea. Love that idea. One of the first in my mind was, is it Zachariah?
Zachariah Branch, yeah.
Yep. I know both of the brothers there. I always get them. I think the other one's Zion.
Good one.
Yeah, Zachariah, I watched the game last year. I think Georgia's clicking at the right time. I'm definitely I realize we got to play Miami or, A&M first, but if we beat one of those teams, I just feel like Georgia's, clicking at this point. You get over Bama, and you don't just get over Bama. Like you curb stomp Bama. Like it was ugly. This seems like this could be a guy that could have a moment, and we've talked about it before. 30 minutes ago, Georgia stuff sells. It sells. I think most of his stuff is in a USA uniform. That could be the trickiest part about this, because I don't think he's got Bowman autos since he's got Panini autos. But I think if we get to the playoff here and he goes for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns, it's not unlikely. Georgia's gonna get Tulane or Ole Miss, and they're gonna score 31, 35 points on could be. He's got some NIL autos in a Panini uniform. They're $20 for some of the score ones. Luminance at 25. He's same thing around that Nate Frazier. Not saying it's gonna happen, but Georgia also sells. Could be an opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout. That's a good one for sure, because he's another guy. He could score anytime he touches the ball. He's just that quick, elusive, fast, everything, special teamer. Yep. He could flip a game to the complete other side, or just kill any sort of momentum for the other team. So that's a good one, Ryan. That is a good one. I'm gonna go I'm gonna go. I got two more. Sadly, two of them are in your region or bracket or on your path. So this one, I'm gonna go Casey Concepcion, wide receiver at A&M. Another guy just
Yeah.
slippery, electric, big play guy, special teamer. It seems like he's had a pretty good season where like McShay's saying he's a top 100 guy in the draft and probably could go higher. So another guy who can just take over the game, just one play. All it takes is just a quick slant to the crib, and everyone's gonna be all over this guy. So I'll go KC right there.
My only thought about him, because I think that's a great one, he is the real deal. He's a little expensive.
He is.
Some of his really good stuff sells really well. He is really good, and he's not a... I think the difference between the first couple guys you and I mentioned, the two Georgia dogs, is those aren't guys that have had, like, bigger moments so far. Concepcion's the real deal, man. He's got a gold shimmer auto at $200. Like, he's got some stuff. Again, mind you, it was a little while ago, but like at a 15 auto, 180, like he's not like a $10 auto. He's $20+ dollars. I mean, orange are 150 plus. Like I love the idea for sure. It's definitely a good one. Who's the other guy? Is it Busey? Busey?
Oh, Terry Bussey?
What?
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, Terry Bussey. That's another one. Hasn't got a lot of touches this year. He was the #1 athlete in the country 2 years ago.
Wow.
Another super fast kid. Hasn't had a lot of touches, but he is a guy that like I'm keeping an eye on him to see what he does, to see is he going to be a guy that breaks out next year. You could also go Mario Craver as well, another speed. Like Texas A&M just has dudes everywhere. So
yeah,
Mario Craver. All right, probably would have been a better choice to your point, or even Bussey just with the price being a factor. So, but I like all three of them for sure.
Yeah, I think Concepcion's like one of those guys that like, Scatterbo wasn't completely unknown tourney. Golden was a lot cheaper heading into the playoff, and that's where I look at it as like some of the other guys like, a Boosie or a Craver were like they're not quite as expensive.
For sure. All right, well, let me get some redemption on this guy then. I'm going to go to Oklahoma, Isaiah Satania. I'm going to go wide receiver there. I'm just going speed here. I just want guys who just get the ball in their hands, let them run for 80 yards and eat up the field. So Isaiah Satania, I think he probably does have some decent high-end sales, but probably, doesn't sell, through the roof. So just another guy, was at Arkansas, was okay, mostly a special teamer, and then kind of broke out this year. Another guy who's like, hey, if he declares, there's a lot of people who are keeping an eye on him. So I don't hate that play.
Don't mind it. I can definitely see that. I think the tricky part for me is like he might get some touches in a a game against Alabama to move on to the next round, and I'm picking the Hoosiers. Pick whoever you want, Oklahoma, Alabama. I'm picking the Hoosiers. I'm keeping my eye on Dante Moore. For a couple reasons. One, because I think if they win, it would take an elite path to get there, because you would have to play Jacob Rodriguez in Texas Tech, and then you would likely have to play Indiana. Then you would likely have to play Ohio State or Georgia. Again, if we're just picking favorites along the way. That's a pretty significant path, so he's going to be in some really meaningful, big-time college football games. They have one loss all year. It is against, the #1 team in the country. But the other thing I'm keeping in mind is there's been a lot of chatter, we've talked about this before, that Oregon feels good that they're going to retain Dante Moore, and they might. But I think with a lot of guys being banged up, some guys coming back to school, I think you're going to see one of these guys just declare and move way up draft boards. And I think Dante Moore has top 15 pick potential. They lose Will Stein, OC, to Kentucky. He's now the head coach there. They don't sign Chris Henry Jr. If this team does make it, great. He could come back and win. If they don't win, he could win national title and leave. I just look at this as like, if it's not now, it could be coming very soon. If he comes back, he's a Heisman top 3 guy heading into next year. If he goes pro, he's a top 15 first round quarterback. If he wins a national, I just look at this as like there's upside on a guy like that Tricky part is Dante Moore sells well. He sells incredibly well. He's got non-autoed supers doing 2.5K. This is not a cheap guy. This is one of the more expensive guys. I've talked a lot about sellers, and I think he'll be a draft guy, and I think he'll move up. But Dante Moore, to me, like, you can buy autos from this year's Chrome for under $75. Like a Campus, I think it's, what is that, Brian? Campus Star? Yeah, $37 for Campus Star auto. If Dante
Campus
Moore
Star
beats
signature.
Texas Tech and is in a Final Four matchup to go to the national title, that might be $100 auto. I'm not saying we got to change our lives on this. I just look at this and say there's going to be an opportunity to sell Dante Moore cards in the next 6 months. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to improve his price. He might go the other way. It works both ways. But I look at Dante Moore as like a guy that could, improve his draft stock.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that. I think Dante Moore, I've said this to a couple people. I think it's a very, I don't want to say safe, but it's like you have a lot of exit opportunity, whether he goes to the draft or comes back. Like he's got the top 10 hype as an NFL draft pick, or he'll be a Heisman favorite next year, assuming, any injury or just, he lays a stinky, you've got a lot of good exit points, I guess, at that point. And whether he declares one way or another, you're in a good spot for sure with Dante.
All right, last talking point today, complete 360. You talk about exit points. You talk about a lot of opportunity. One guy I'm keeping an eye on as we just right now. One person's cards I'm keeping an eye on. I think it's got a little bit of momentum around him.
No.
Arch Manning.
Oh. Okay, I had two guys in mind, and I didn't even think that it would be close, and yeah, I was not on that wavelength.
Yeah, I think this Arch Manning thing is an interesting one. He still has some major sales. They're humongous. Flawless RPA north of 2.5. Big time sales. Prism draft from this year, 250. Like, finishes the season with some momentum. Beats Texas A&M last home game of the year. Not going to the CFP, likely not going to play in the bowl game, I can't imagine. There's been talks if he goes out, he's a high draft pick. If he comes back and Texas retains a lot of their talent, I know CJ Baxter, their running back, just got in the portal. I look at, again, there's always that, it's kind of like some of these other schools, it's always their year. It's their year. Texas is back. Texas is the real deal, right? Texas, that's an elite program in college football. He's got the name. Someone's going to pick Arch Manning because they think he's going to be good and because he has that last name. If Arch Manning never played it down in college right now, I think he's a first-round pick. I'm not saying I would want my team to pick him, but I think he's a first-round pick. I'm just keeping an eye on his stuff. I just think it's it's high. Its cost of entry is probably the highest of anyone in college football, but just a very interesting thing. I can just see the storyline writing itself where it's like Arch Manning, future top 10 pick. And then I just think all hell breaks loose. If that happens, Arch Manning stuff's expensive now. Top 10 pick in the draft is a whole different kind of expensive.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting point, Ryan. And honestly, like, out of sight, out of mind, like not a guy that I probably would have, been thinking about. We're in the college football playoffs. I'm focused on these guys and anyone who's, pretty close to the draft, and he's always been that mystery. So yeah, that's something to keep in the back of the mind.
All right. Well, we're running a little long on this one. Next week, we'll make predictions. We'll break down the bracket a little bit more. We'll give those predictions, and we'll recap the Heisman. We'll see if it's as close as Gabe would like it to be. I doubt it, but we'll talk about it next week. See you guys. All right, shout out to our guy Darius. Shout out to our guy Gabe Card Stacks, the man himself. Big release week. First and foremost, I've got to start with the most important one. Topps Chrome Update Baseball. This is the product, in my opinion. I've talked about this probably 15 of our 45 episodes, or 40-some episodes we've done on this channel. The Chrome, the Debut Patch Auto 101 is the single greatest modern-day trading card you could make of an athlete. This will be an opportunity to see those pulled. So many big names in this product this year. I know last year was Skeens, hard to top that. But you've got some big time names in there. This product is hot. It breaks. It sells in shop. It sells online. This is a big time release. that drops this week. So excited to see some of those debut patch autos hit the market. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Star Wars Chrome Galaxy, beautiful set every year. I'm not huge into Star Wars. I watched all the movies growing up. Definitely a fan, but I'm not like a hardcore Star Wars guy. But I love the photos they put on Star Wars Chrome Galaxy. Reminds me of like a stadium club in baseball, maybe a photogenic in basketball or football. Just the photography is so good. I realize they're, fictional characters, not athletes, but the idea with the photos is they're definitely top notch. They do a really good job on those, and some of those superfractors from Topps Chrome Star Wars Galaxy can do can do numbers. You got a Game of Thrones product. They usually always come out around this time of year because I usually buy a case to rip with the family on Christmas. Love Game of Thrones, one of the greatest TV shows ever. They don't release a ton of these products, but normally there's 1 or 2 releases a year, so that'll be a fun one to rip. And then you've obviously got Archives Baseball, a really good collector type product. A lot of collectors like that one, so I think that one will do okay. And I know NT Collegiate, first off the line, dropped yesterday, so I don't know if those will ship and have later this week, but if we do get those, we'll have some of those to upload to YouTube as well. Looking forward to that. Again, I think that's our last big time college football product release, but it's been an amazing 6 to 8 week period with so much good college football right before the CFP too, so excited for that. But again, we'll get Chrome basketball next week. We've got some more stuff coming soon. So, like I said earlier, I think I said this last week. This is a crazy end to 2025. There's a lot of big products coming out. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens next week. But for now, that is all I got. Peace, guys.